Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to look at some terrifying home invasions from Reddit, where something is trying to get in every single night. So if you like watching people be terrified of their own house, this one's for you. And just a reminder before we get into it, this is a weekly series, so if you haven't checked out our other videos in this series, make sure you do because they are creepy as hell. And let's get into it. Every night something terrifying tried to get into my house. I was 8 years old, living with my parents and brother in a 3-bedroom single-story home. We had a dog. It was strange that we didn't have a fence or any locks on any of the windows except for the master bedroom. The front door had a deadbolt, but it was old and extremely loose. The hinges were shot. That door got used so rarely that the lock wasn't even put back properly when the door was closed. You could easily nudge it open. If you put your shoulder into it, it would come right off its hinges. Our house was at the end of a cul-de-sac. I don't remember there being any streetlights, just big dark patches everywhere. Our backyard backed onto a wooded area. It was quite overgrown, and most people who lived on our street preferred to keep their curtains drawn at night. Our house was the only one without curtains. One evening my parents went out to a restaurant with friends while my brother and I were left home alone. We were instructed to watch TV and not open the door to anyone and to call our parents if we heard anything weird. Shortly after they left, we heard what sounded like screams in the forest. Then we started hearing heavy footsteps near our house. My brother and I started getting creeped out. We turned off the lights and started watching TV with the sound turned way up. Then we heard the screen door open. My brother and I looked at each other and then screamed at the top of our lungs. The noise outside stopped and we heard the screen door slam shut. We called our parents, who were close by, and told them what we heard. They called us paranoid kids and said they were on their way home. When they arrived, they checked all the doors and windows and couldn't find any signs of forced entry. My dad went into the backyard to check the fence and found a broken board, which he promptly fixed. Life returned to normal and we never thought much about that night again. However, that same thing happened every single night. Same exact sequence of events: screams in the woods, footsteps, the screen door opening and slamming shut. My parents became increasingly frustrated and scared. They even invested in a security system and cameras. But no matter how many times they checked, they couldn't find any evidence of an intruder. I was now 17 and still living at home. I had almost gotten used to the nightly routine, although I was still scared. One night, during the usual commotion, I was able to see outside through the window. What I saw was beyond comprehension. There was a humanoid creature covered in what looked like leaves and sticks, walking on 2 legs towards the house. It was tall and skinny and was dragging itself closer and closer. I quickly turned away, hiding my face behind my hands, and screamed for my parents. They came running into my room and demanded I tell them what was wrong. But when they looked outside, there was nothing there. This happened several more times throughout the year. The creature would always come within a few feet of the front door, and then turn around and walk back into the woods. Sometimes we would hear it crash through the trees. Other times we would hear what sounded like a loud splash in a nearby lake. My parents were at their wits' end. They couldn't take the fear and the sleep deprivation anymore. They packed a few things and left. I begged them not to go because I was scared to be alone in the house, but they refused. They left me instructions on what to do if anything happened and left with promises to call the police and hire a private investigator. I was alone in the house for the first time. As the sun set, I began to panic. I locked all the doors and watched all the windows. I sat on the floor in the corner of the living room, hugging my stuffed animal from when I was a child, watching the shadows grow longer and longer. As darkness fell, the familiar sounds started. Screams in the woods, footsteps, the screen door opening. I started screaming at the top of my lungs. The creature outside stopped, and then I heard what sounded like heavy footsteps running away. I stayed on the floor until my parents came home with the police. The next morning, the cops told me they found huge footprints in the mud near the lake, but they couldn't find the creature. They also searched the woods, but didn't find anything. Eventually, my parents came to the conclusion that it was a bear or some other wild animal. The police agreed and filed the case. I didn't believe them. 3 years later, I am still living in that same house, and every night something terrifying tries to get in. Now, whenever I hear the screen door open, I know that if I go and look, there will be nothing there. The door will be closed and locked. Though, from the inside, I've tried to fix the door, but it won't budge. It's like there's something keeping it shut. And if I manage to force it open, it's as if whatever's on the other side is trying to push it shut. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. I really think there's something out there trying to get in, but I can't let myself go and check. That was terrifying. I'm glad that OP is okay. That's one scary story. Let's move on to the next one. I was always careful, but not paranoid, until I moved into my new apartment. I moved into my new apartment and everything seemed fine. The building was very old though, and it took months to get the place ready to live in. The walls were thin and there were gaps around all the windows and doors. Since I was alone for the first time ever, I was jumpy and paranoid. I made sure to lock the windows and doors every night before bed, and even bought a big dog to help ease my anxiety. One night I woke up in the middle of the night and could have sworn I heard someone trying to break down my front door. I called the police and they checked around the outside of the house, but there was no sign of a break-in or anyone around. The officers told me to try to go back to sleep and that it was probably just my imagination. However, over the next few weeks, I kept hearing scratching and thumping coming from the other side of my door in the middle of the night. It sounded like someone was on the other side of my door trying to break in. Every time I would call the police, they would say the same thing. They checked outside, and there was never any signs of a break-in or intruders. My neighbors also said they never heard anything. On top of this, I started noticing small items missing from around my apartment. Nothing of value, but the police couldn't prove that a burglar was trying to break in either. This continued for months. I became so paranoid that I wouldn't leave my apartment. I stopped working and spent all my days sitting by the door with a baseball bat, waiting for someone to break in. I even resorted to taping plastic sheeting to the cracks in the windows and doors. I thought maybe if someone was trying to come in, I would hear the plastic. However, one night, I was awakened by my dog barking and the sound of breaking glass. I ran to my window and saw a shadowy figure standing in my yard. I screamed and dropped the phone. The figure slowly walked away and disappeared into the darkness. In the morning, I went to my window and saw that the pane had been shattered. There were also deep scratches on my door, as if someone was trying to claw their way in. To this day, I don't know what that creature was or why it wanted to get into my house. It sounds like OP needs to invest in some real security. Hey, at least OP knows now that their door isn't the best protection against home invaders. Speaking of doors, have you ever had a home invader come through a window? Because I have. Check out this video over here, where I look at some terrifying stories of home invaders coming through the window. Or check out this video over here, which is also great. Or I'll see you in the next video.